Well, welcome, everyone. Come on in, have a seat, boys and girls. Welcome to the Cluster Puck Podcast, part of the MHRT Network here at Center Ice. I am Nick. Beside me here shortly is Brit. We have a lot of stuff to cover this week. A lot of fun news, a couple sad items that we'll try to get through as well, but a lot of news nonetheless. But before we begin, don't forget, everyone, to like and subscribe. Follow the MHRT Network so you can get notified when shows like the Cluster Puck Podcast go live. You can follow the MHRT Network on the various social media platforms that they have: Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Instagram, Threads, X, you name it. We got it. So if you want to follow us specifically, you can follow us at Cluster Puck Avs on Twitter, Instagram, and Threads. There she is. Hey, Britt.
How's it going?
Good. And you can follow us as well on the Cluster Puck Podcast on Facebook. Okay, Britt, we got a lot of stuff to talk about this week. Like I was telling them, some good, some sad. I think maybe we try to get the sad news out of the way first.
Sorry.
No, you're good. So just over the week, that was revealed that Chris Simon, former Nordique and Avalancheman, who was part of that Stanley Cup winning season in the inaugural 95-96 season, passed away last week or earlier this week, I should say, on Tuesday. So very tragic to see how it happened. Obviously, it's a very sensitive subject, and we keep him and his family in his prayers. But if I just wanted to say a couple things about him, he was a very different breed of hockey player, for what it was worth. He got probably the coolest head of lettuce on him. He had great flowing hair. But
there's a lot of kids who specifically wanted that hairstyle. That's the you go to the hairstylist and ask them for this. It's not even feasible whatsoever.
That's right. But he was an interesting player because he was a fighter. That you go and look up highlights on him on any YouTube or whatever, it's fights. And he was no coward. He was not afraid to back down in any way, shape, or form. But he wasn't just your average goon that you find nowadays, where it seems like is the only thing. He had great seasons, offensively as well. He scored the puck very, very well. He only was on the Avs or Nordiques for 3 seasons, Avalanche for just the one before going on to other teams. But still a very, very tragic news to hear. Like I said, our thoughts and prayers are with him and his family at this moment, and wishing the Simon family all the best. But
it's
Britt, I don't know.
Really sad. He was that was my childhood. I mean, he was kind of a staple of that era of hockey. He played for several teams, and he was an enforcer, and there was, I think he had a 29 goal season, and then he also led the league or his team in penalty minutes. So there's not many guys that can score 29 goals and spend that much time in the penalty box.
Yeah.
And the coach still willing to put them out on the ice. So and he was just a huge personality. It's kind of sad, people are coming out trying to remind people that he was so much more than an enforcer. It sounds like he was an absolute sweetheart off the ice. He was a behemoth. He's 6'4", 250. But it sounds like he was just a delightful person off the ice, which there's a lot of people that are like that. People like Darcy Tucker. I just listened to his interview, shockingly calm. And a lot of these enforcers are guys that didn't plan to have a career, but that was the spot that was notched out for them. You have to find something that you can excel in. But he had some really funny commercials back then. I don't know if you remember some of the commercials. There was one where he knocked over an old lady at a grocery store, but it's kind of, the family did come out and say that they really do feel like the CTE was a large contributing factor in his, he committed suicide. And that's, suicide is something that is so hard to talk about, but I do think that it is important to acknowledge when it happens, because that's how we figure out what can we do to have helped these people to stop it. And I really do, CTE is something that I'm, I can't say I'm passionate about, but I really do care a lot. And the reaction from the NHL and Gary Bettman is still, NHL is the only sport that has now recognized CTE and being a contributing factor from head hits. And it's really frustrating. So I hope that we can see something change down the road with the science that we have. It really makes you think about how we play the game and, you know, what we're going to choose to allow and not allow, because I don't want to see people like McKinnon and McCarr's careers cut short just for the sake of a couple big hits. You know, it just grosses me out. But yeah, it's
and
52. I mean, that is not old at all. I'm closer to 52 than I am to 20. So it's really way too young. And there's so many in this era.
Yeah, and you're exactly right. And you look at even the injuries that happened today, you know, like we talked so much about the concussions that Bowen Byram had and Sidney Crosby. And then that's just to name the most recent ones. In fact, the Avalanche, they're no stranger to concussions. Right?
Matty Calvert. I would give anything to have.
We had Matt Calvert, who
beloved, absolutely
he had something. Yeah, and the Avalanche Nation loved him. He rhymed perfectly with the Avalanche organization, but concussions, they came back and haunted him.
At one point that I felt like Sidney Crosby needed to consider retirement, because there are people who are valuable beyond, well, everybody's valuable beyond hockey, but for what Sidney Crosby was going through, it's needed to be a serious consideration, because these guys have lives after hockey, and hockey is not a long career. So I don't know. And it's beyond fighting now. These guys are skating so fast that these head hits, these like elbows, catching elbows, hitting the boards and stuff, we really truly have to consider how we penalize and suspend people to make people really think twice before they lay these hits.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And
also send Jacob Trouba, yeet him into space.
There you go. But anyway, like we said, we wish the Simon family nothing but the best, and then they're in our thoughts at this moment. So, okay, so we'll go ahead, switch gears here to the current Avalanche squad that we have. Brit, we're gone streaking, and it's the best kind of streaking you can ask for.
What a transition! Like, we get ready to go on this road trip, and everybody's butt puckers. Like, it's just like we don't have good feelings about road trips, but apparently we're back to what was it that we excelled at in our 2022 Stanley Cup season, Nick? It was winning every single game on the road. Like,
it was being able to win the away games. You're exactly right. So if I'm not mistaken, I believe that is a 7-game winning streak, the longest winning streak of the season, which kind of sounds a little surprising, but given kind of the way the Avalanche are kind of up and down, then up and down, 7 kind of sounds like it's a miracle at this point. They didn't have anything longer since the beginning of the season, the first 6 games.
The opening stretch. Yeah. When we're like, oh, hell yeah. And then it was all...
We thought we were going to win the cup by the time 15 games were played.
Yeah.
But
everything is lining up to feel like the 2022 season. Because last year, I never at one point felt any reminiscence of this team reflecting that team. But it feels like everything is going that direction. I don't know if you agree, but I have more confidence in this team than I have since the second we won the cup. I mean, I have not felt this comfortable with our lineup as a whole.
Yes, and I think the big defining moment for me that was kind of solidified, that my opinion of it's cup run again, is when we traded for 4 guys at the trade deadline.
Yeah. Because that tells you that they believe. Last year, we clearly didn't really feel as though it was there. Thank God we didn't spend those first-round picks last year, which granted we got some of them in the offseason, but thank God we didn't sell the farm last year. Yep. And I can understand why.
And that's exactly right. I mean, you saw what – and that's not to say we had a bad team last year. In fact, we had a really good team. We thought we for sure were going at least minimum second round,
Well,
but this team just feels
all about luck and timing. And last year, nothing was on time. Absolutely.
Yes. This team just feels different because, you look at last year, we were like, oh, we're fine where we are. We didn't make too many moves at the at the trade deadline, if any. This year, we kind of did what we did on our cup run, where we liked what we had. We had holes that we needed to fill. Instead of going and finding the biggest best name out there,
holes, distinct, easy, like
exactly. And
clear.
it's a very copy paste type situation from the cup run season a couple of years ago, to where it's like you just needed to get that guy to fit in there, this guy to fit in there, and they in my opinion hit a home run with all four of them, because that's kind of how Chris McFarland operates. And
Yeah.
he like I said, he hit a home run with all four picks, and I would
Yeah,
definitely
we
agree
struck
with
out
you.
on Johansson, and I mean, they basically cut, re-sewed it, glued it shut, and I mean, it's gone. It's like it never even happened. And having to deal with him feels totally worth it for what we gained, because we would not have been able to fill these holes in free agency over the summer like we have in this trade deadline. And what's
Correct.
amazing is, short of cap space, there's a good chance we can keep almost all of them.
Yeah, which is really, and I think that's kind of why I was so impressed with the Middlestat trade, is because even though he's a free agent, he's a restricted free agent.
Yeah,
And
he's
from
staying.
what it
Yeah.
sounds like, he really likes it here, which I'm kind of not surprised, because it seems like a lot of players, a lot of acquisitions that we get, be they mid-season, signs, whatever it is, as soon as they play a few games, they're like, this place is awesome.
Well,
You
and
know?
I don't know, did I send you that clip of the Alex Tuck interview from 32 Thoughts?
No.
I just can't imagine. Casey Middlestat is a very successful player who is really, really hardworking, and he's been playing for Ottawa for so long that it's got to be exhausting just losing and losing and losing and losing and losing. So it is such a force when these guys get this kind of hope. It's really kind of sad though. So I'll just briefly, Alex Tuck had an interview with Elliot Friedman that was prior to the trade deadline. And he's such a great guy. Like, I don't know if you know Alex Tuck a lot, but God, he's really, really sweet. And he's like a really deep thinker. Like he reads books, but he's just a really good person. And Elliot Friedman was talking about how they're going to turn it around, and just how young the team is, and talking about different leaders, and if he ever thought that he would be the captain. And Elliot asked him, who are some of the leaders on your team that maybe don't even know that they're leaders because they're so young? And he just had like a really deep, thoughtful answer that Casey Middlestat is such a leader, that he takes hold of a room, that people want to follow him, that just personality wise, friendship, hockey player wise, people gravitate to him. That he's just got an incredible hockey IQ. And now hearing it post deadline, it makes me kind of sad for him, but also like, how obvious is that from the way we see him having integrated seamlessly into this locker room, when it's a lot. We have a good locker room, but it's not like the friendliest, goofiest, like Golden Knights, like band together and goof around. You know what I mean? It's a pretty tense locker room. And I continue my opinion that I don't think that McKinnon is a very enjoyable person most of the time. So like, he is clearly someone who is pulling the rope the same direction, and it's showing on the ice a lot, along with everyone else. But I think him in particular, it's just like a puzzle piece perfectly fitting in there. And I really think that what Alex Tuck said about him is, it reiterates that about him.
Yeah, and you're exactly right. You look at, how Middlestat amongst everyone has just gelled. And it's interesting because, you go to 2 years ago, our acquisitions, or big ones that we talk about, were Andrew Cogliano, Josh Manson, and Arturi Lehkonen, all of which are still with the team and signed to term. Well, Cogliano is year to year because, well, he's old, but that's beside the
they're
point.
essentially our core. I mean, they have integrated Manson
Exactly.
not quite as much, maybe, but Cogliano is like,
he's a pretty irreplaceable piece.
Worshipped. And it's crazy. Yeah. At this point, we've added such valuable people that he might end up being a scratch. And that's how well these people are fitting, is that we might be pushing out our soul, our heart and soul.
One
and
guy.
I think the guy that will tolerate it. But, that's how good this is. It's a struggle to figure out who we're going to scratch should Kovalenko work his way into the lineup.
Yes, and we'll get to Kovalenko in just a second. But let's talk about real quick the two games that we did have from the last time we spoke. 2 wins.
Mm-hmm.
One of them, an overtime thriller, and the other one a really solid performance overall by the team in a 4-3 win over the Blues. So let's get to the Edmonton game. So you win the game in overtime 3-2. We'll talk about the moment in a second, but overall, this was, in my opinion, the Sean Walker showcase.
Yeah.
He was outrageously good in that game. He got 2 goals. He was very close to having a hat trick. Obviously, the second goal, that assist from Middlestat, was just wild. Drouin had himself a great night. But it was one of those games where
the first period, did you feel like they were just feeling each other out? Like, what are we doing here?
This is kind of what I said, because last week I said it's a game of momentum shifts, right? Maybe not they're running up the score, but momentum, heavy momentum. Mm-hmm. And you saw this. Now, granted, I did not expect the game to go as fast as it did. That game,
and that's what it was,
very like fast game.
Almost any other game on like 1.25 speed. I mean, it was such just it's hard to even imagine getting to watch like a whole series of those, because that was not how our Western Conference final matchup against them was. It was not like that at all. And my other favorite aspect that I just have to point out is I love that it was the Sam Walker show, and the big goal came from what's his name, Carrick, which are both like 2 really not that talked about dudes that were just depth pickups. And they both were skating on the ice with possibly 4 of the best players in the world in Draisaitl, McKinnon, Makar, and McDavid. And here's the 2 like agent depth out here like stealing the show, and in the most theatrical way. I mean, they were beautiful. It's not like these were lame. Like, it wasn't all just garbage. There was nothing that felt yuck or stolen or undeserved. I mean, it was so beautiful. And also Sam Walker, it was so funny, is I picked him early in free agency in fantasy. He was just like a solid, it was when there was like no one left. He was a solid like
and
2 or 3.
Yeah, sure, come on.
It was when Dougie Hamilton went on waivers, so like forever ago, and he was like 2 or 3 points a night. He's had like 33 points since the deadline. He's rocking it now since he came to the Avs. This is going to work out very well for me.
Which unfortunately it's unfortunate for me, because it's championship week for our fantasy sports that we're doing, and you and I are playing each other for 3rd place. So
the championship. Oh man, I forgot to set it the other night. I was so mad.
Well, we're neck and neck too, and I'm like, boy, I got to be careful with how I'm doing my picks. So it's going to be a fun week. I'm excited for the next few days.
The lineups this week are kind of boring. I don't know. The games this week are not super duper fun. It feel like every day it's always just like the Red Wings, the Blue Jackets, the Detroit, Dallas, just constantly in the news.
Well, and we even talked about that at the beginning of the season, is just Connor Bedard and the Blackhawks got so much media attention.
Yeah.
You know, and I feel like it's kind of every single like Wednesday, it's like it's always the Blackhawks, which is crazy. But
and the Penguins, they get so many national games and they suck so bad.
Yeah, it's been a ride. I think it's the end of an era there, but hey, as long as you have the names,
new beginnings,
Brit,
new faces.
If you're right, I'm just saying.
What did we bet on? It's like $1 billion, $3 billion. That Crosby's going to be ours.
Was that the bet? Oops. I meant $3.50.
But yeah, it was just, you cannot ask for more in a game. I mean,
it was
probably
a great game.
The year, really.
Yeah, and you're exactly right. At the very beginning of the game, the whole game, everything was just happening.
The goalies both played phenomenal, and that's what I said, is we need everybody to play their best for it to feel good. And the goalies played so damn good. Oh my God, they did. They played so good. And it's funny because these are 2 goalies in the league, probably the 2 that have the highest ceiling and possibly the lowest bar. Is that what the lowest bar on any given night? Like they could both be otherworldly good or otherworldly bad, and they were both so damn good. So
They really were. They really were. And that's just it. Is this game? They were basically identical. Excuse me,
yeah,
in every single way, shape, and form. With the minus,
yeah.
with the exception of shots, but the moment, it was. I thought for sure, A, it was heading to overtime. B, it
Mm-hmm.
was heading to shootouts. But there were a couple guys who had other thoughts. This, to me, if I were to put this season under two categories, I would say the Vancouver game, that game prior,
Yep.
was the best game of the Avalanche season. I would say that Nathan MacKinnon to Arturi Lehkonen overtime goal with a half a second left was the best moment of the season. That
It was
pass,
like there's not many things where you're like you almost don't even cheer. You literally just drop your jaw, and everybody's like, "Wait, what? What?"
yep.
Including one of those top 4 players in the world, Sir Leon Draisaitl, who doesn't even look at the goal or anything. You can see him immediately look at the clock and go, fudge.
Like, are
Like,
you kidding me?
and that's the
Um,
difference between guys like Lehkonen and MacKinnon. That's Stanley Cup winning mentality is when you literally play every single second and
yep,
half second down to the eighth of a second left.
exactly. And like I even posted on our Twitter for the final score sheet, like I had that GIF, right, of just that's my reaction to
Yeah.
how that ended. It was the most insane thing because Nathan MacKinnon, he's diving into the corner with like 3 seconds left, and I'm like, well, he tried. Out of nowhere, he has this vision to just kick the puck back to himself as he's doing a turn, backhand shovel passes it to a screaming down the slot Lehkonen, who puts
Yeah,
it
and
in. And
for them to both play that till that second, I mean, is impressive. It's one
it
thing
was,
for McKinnon to get that shot. All Draisaitl has to do is pin it in the corner. That's all you have to do is just pin it in the
yep,
corner. And for Mac to fumble that and Draisaitl essentially assume he was going to give up on it, for him to get that to his stick in that moment so quick. I mean, that's Stanley Cup winner. Like that's
it really
amazing.
was. And I think I put this on the audio clip on repeat was that Mark Mosier during the call had no idea if that went in or not. So he was hesitant. And so you just hear him go,
Mosier?
score, because he had no idea because everything happened so fast.
Yeah.
And Allie and I got a kick out of it because it was just because same thing. He was in disbelief, just like the rest of us,
Yeah.
because
I
it
don't
was
it was I don't
that
even remember
impressive.
if I cheered. I think that we were more like kind of confused and just shocked that I don't know what the closest to zero probably Kadri's goal. Like is that the other
Probably, yeah, with
closest
like
to
point
the buzzer
zero
goal?
zero zero one.
Yeah.
Crazy. But again, you walk away with an important 2 points, right? Because if it goes to shootouts, it becomes a crapshoot, right? So
Yeah, you don't
I don't
want a
want to
game
say
like that to be decided like that. And it's
exactly
funny because
this
George is a phenomenal shootout goalie, but like it doesn't we don't it's not right. I hate shootouts.
exactly. And it was a very fairy tale ending, I would probably say, to a really fantastic game. So really awesome to walk away with 2 points in that one. Very big 2 points. And then you get to go to St. Louis to finish the 4-game
Yeah.
road trip. Hopefully, by that point you're 3 for 3. You might as well try to go for 4 for 4. And Brit, they went 4 for 4, winning the game 4-3 in a very. If I were to give it a movie title, it would be the upcoming movie of the Ungentlemanly Warfare movie. That's
Yeah,
kind of
just
how I see it. It
muck and
was
grind.
it was a very grindy, gritty game, very well played on both ends. I mean, Eustace Honorton, fantastic. Obviously, he lets in 3. One of them I was like really hoping they challenge, but I'm glad they didn't. And Jordan Bennington played phenomenally. But again, this is the game where your depth really played a big piece in the victory. Casey Middleset obviously has.
Devontae's really, really struggled in this game.
Say that again.
Devontae's my like little bit of negative is he really struggled in this game. I think that it was like the second goal was a direct, absolutely horrible turnover from him that led to the second goal, I believe. But he had a couple, I don't know, and he got it together. But man, he's had a couple bad games this year. I really hope that we don't see these in the playoffs.
Yeah, it was a bit of a dud. However, I would say it was definitely made up for by one Mikko Rantanen, who scored his 7th career hat trick.
So I feel like it should be more. Because what if we had him for 7 years?
I feel like he should, because didn't he he had 2 last year, didn't he?
Yeah. I mean, so he's had to have gone full years without a hat trick, you suppose?
I think so.
Because I think his first contract was like 4 years, and now he's on the 5 years. He's on the 5 or 6 years. But I mean, regardless, I would have thought that he at least had 1 hat trick every year. But I also was stunned that Makar hadn't had a hat trick yet, which is he's D. But leave it to Mikko to have a hat trick, but also do some of the dumbest shit at the exact same time in the game. I mean, he is just a specimen of a person, but when he's good, he's just so good. I mean, so effortless. Could you imagine if he worked like McKinnon did? Like, he's so smart. If he worked as hard as McKinnon did, he would be the best player in the world, the whole entire world, and maybe even galaxy. He was phenomenal.
No, he really was.
He is a lot more flashy, likes to feel good and hot. So hopefully this game was a nice little send off for him to really get hot going into the stretch here.
Yep, I agree. And in lieu of those 2 victories, obviously we talked about Justus Anderson playing a really good game for himself. He's kind of started to solidify himself as that really dependable backup. There are a couple questions in lieu of the winning that we've been doing, the great play that we've seen from Justus Anderson. We'll talk about this one first, and then we got another question that will go. How confident do you both feel in Anderson going into the playoffs if something happens to Georgiev? Do you think he could handle being a playoff starter? I feel like this game against St. Louis was definitely a jumping off point, I would say, for Justus Anderson, because previously we'd see him against kind of those bottom feeder teams, Chicago, San Jose, Calgary, those types of games. But this is a St. Louis team who was fighting and clawing tooth and nail to get into a playoff spot.
This
and he was able to
pretty much sealed the deal for them, I think. Like really counted them.
And so for Justus Anderson to go out, obviously he let in 3. I'm going to say 3 with an asterisk because, again, I still feel like he was pushed in one of those. But that to me said he is able to at least perform for a wild card type level at least. Now, if he goes any further, that does become iffier because we haven't seen him play up against the best of the best, right? Which I don't know if you will, but it's going to be kind of similar to what maybe Francouz had to deal with that Stanley Cup run where he played the entire Edmonton series.
I don't think that obviously I don't think that Onanen is to the level of Francouz, but honestly, short of Boston, really nobody has had a backup goalie, which Boston is essentially a tandem at this point, and we kind of just beat it to that because I think that the strength of Georgiev when he's playing his best is his ceiling is a lot higher than Kemper's. And I think that that can compensate. And I also think that Georgie's just a very healthy goalie. So I don't have a whole lot of worries short of a freak thing for him to make it through. I would be more worried if he were one of those guys who needs to take breaks and rests and has knees or groins or hips or whatever. But I honestly wouldn't be surprised if we got out of some series quickly if we saw him play the whole entire series run. Because when you think about how quick that is, you can stress your body that much for that long to just get through it. And I don't have an issue with him if we have a couple gimme games. And I don't fear putting him in to get through a couple of even like games later in the playoffs, especially when you consider the way that the team is going to ramp it up in front of our goalies. I really think that we could compensate for that in front of him. But I mean, I feel okay, not great. Would I like something better? Yeah, but would I rather what we got up front versus having put that money into a backup goalie?
Exactly.
Absolutely. I would much rather have Sean Walker than Jake Allen backing up Georgiev.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you know what Annunen can produce, which is a comforting fact. Like I said, I'm happy with how he's playing. There are a couple little things that I would like for him to do in order for him to graduate to that next level. Exactly. Like the one thing I do notice with Annunen, he doesn't trap as much as Georgiev does.
Yes, and that's something with Georgiev, his save percentage being such a point of contention throughout the season is he has such excellent rebound control that he almost wrecks his own save percentage because he doesn't give out rebounds to make more saves. So that's something a lot of people really don't consider. And I think that the biggest, most comforting thing about Annunen is he is such a we saw the one where he gave up some quick and he's shut it down. He is a very calm, non-reactive goalie, which I think is something that's really valuable compared to guys who may seem to struggle emotionally. He really doesn't seem to struggle emotionally at all. I've literally never seen the guy show a single sign of emotion. So I think that is probably the most comforting thing in all of it. And it's not like a rookie has never come in and stolen the show after really not performing. I mean, Aiden Hill was a lifelong backup up until. So, I mean, it doesn't concern me too much. I think he's got the foundation to deserve to be there. And yeah, like I said, I'd rather get what we got up front than have Jake Allen maybe play 3 games if Georgiev goes on a run.
Yep, I agree. The second question, and this comes from our one and only Bill. He says, in both of your opinions, do the Avalanche have a chance to win the conference or just the division or neither? And I'll even add both to that category.
Yeah.
I'm going to say it's not going to come up to the Avalanche because the Avalanche, I think, will they'll be able to handle their own games just fine.
Yeah.
It's going to depend on how other teams perform. That's what it's going to come down to. I think the Avalanche will handle their business, but the rest really depends on if Dallas and Winnipeg will lose in order for you to win.
Dallas Ottinger is struggling greatly. He's running like an 88% save average for the last month. They're going to get hit hard. I think can win the division, but for the conference, definitely it's going to depend. The way teams are shitting the bed off and on is wild this year. Absolutely. This is the weirdest year ever.
It really is, because you look at it right now, as it stands, Vancouver, a Pacific Division team, has the most in the conference with 94.
And Demko is injured, which is...
And Demko's injured, which they're still able to crank out these types of games. Pretty impressive, right?
It is.
Right below that with 93. So a point away at 3 teams. And guess what? They're all your Central Division top 3 with the Jets, Avalanche, and Stars, right? So any 3 of those, all 4 really, if you think about it, and Edmonton maybe to a lesser degree, but I'll say at least those 4 teams all have a shot to win the conference, 3 of which obviously are your division. So I think it's going to depend on what happens on the outside factor. Yeah. Is Vancouver going to go on a losing streak? Is Dallas? Is Winnipeg? I think the Avalanche handled their business, but ultimately it's not going to be up to them, most of it.
Well, and
it's
also,
going to be up to the others.
Do we want to win the conference and possibly go into the first round? Maybe could we see Vegas first? Is that how?
As it sits right now, let me pull that up. Assuming if everything stays as is, there are the games in hand, but we'll assume right now we would be seeing Dallas as a 2nd seed.
Okay. They don't.
You could be seeing, if you got 1st seed, you'd be seeing Nashville. Or if you win the entire conference, you do see Vegas. Potentially,
I don't like that at all.
Potentially Minnesota or St. Louis still. They're still there clinging on by some dear life going on, but it is Vegas. Now Here's
That's
my
gonna
thing.
be Vegas, possibly with Hurdle rolling in. What up? I'm healthy. Like,
Yeah, and if Mark Stone shows up, so help me. I'm just saying.
yeah, and they're
But
struggling. They're floundering. They very well may not even make the playoffs as a consequence of the bullshit. Like, and oh my God, I would give my life to see them miss the playoffs again to
it
make
would
them.
be kind of funny. But here's, I guess, my question then, Britt. Who, and I'll kind of I'll take Bill's question and pull it even further. Who would you rather face off against in round one between those teams that we discussed?
So pretty much between Dallas, Preds. Are
So
those that probably
it'd be Dallas, Winnipeg, Nashville, Vegas. We'll say those are your 4 options.
I don't know, Nick. There's something wrong with my brain. I cannot compute the fact that the Winnipeg Jets are this good. I still cannot even. And
forget the Jets. What about the Canucks?
So the Canucks, I'm there because like I love Demko, so I follow them a little bit more. But with the Jets, I just would rather not play them simply because I feel like the Avs have they have this thing where like I feel like they just get goalied, and it's almost like they get in their head when they get goalied, and the Jets are one goalie injury away from being like nobody's. So I would rather not play them. Part of me, so I'm kind of back and forth. The Preds are hot, but it's gonna fade. Like they're just not it. They're just mad because they didn't get to go to U2. Their coach canceled their concert. So then they went on a rage streak. But I like the idea of beating Dallas and like because have we conquered that giant in the playoffs yet? We didn't play them in the cup run, did we?
Talking about who? Sorry.
Dallas. We didn't have to beat them in ours.
No, we went through Nashville, St. Louis, Edmonton, and then Tampa.
Okay. So, and then it's just like with them, a lot of it comes down to Ottinger, and he's kind of like Georgie. He can be really, really good, but he's been really, really bad, which is so weird because he struggled in the playoffs, I think, every time they've gone. So I think the Preds would be the easiest out if we're looking for the easiest out. But I think that Dallas would be the kind of like Toronto needs to beat the Bruins to win the Stanley Cup to really make it feel right to conquer your demons, I guess. That makes sense. But yeah, probably the Preds, I think, even though they did kick our ass once this year.
That's the thing that scares me. So if you ask me,
Saros is
I would, and like I said, this is strictly a matchup question. It's not the fact that we don't want success or anything like that. This is strictly a matchup question. Mm-hmm. I would rather play Dallas.
I totally get that. I now that I think about it, think about the loss, that loss.
Exactly. And the thing is Nashville has our number, right?
And we have Dallas number.
And I know that they're on a hot streak and that might come to an end, but the problem is they're catching fire at a very inopportune moment for the Avalanche, right? And I just don't want to be
very Predator-ish. Or no, Panthers.
Potentially could. Yep. And so that's the thing is I'm not too worried about Vegas at the moment, right? Because Hurdle has not played a single game with him. He doesn't know the system. There would have to be a lot of understanding that would need to go on.
Let's manifest this in the playoffs. Please.
Winnipeg does concern me, just because they're just a ne'er-do-wrong type team, right? So that kind of leaves Dallas.
Hellebuck steals series by himself.
He does. You can get goalied by Hellebuck, right? So that leaves Dallas, which we have come back 3-0 from.
We're in their heads.
Mangled them at home and away. We have their number. So to me, if you were to ask me, I'd want to take Dallas in round one. It's not going to be easy. It would still go to 6, maybe 7 games. But I just feel like that is a matchup that we have an upper hand on, right? So interesting. It'll be interesting to see who we have. And obviously with this different team that we have and kind of stuff that'll happen, the Avalanche can put together a great series of games.
In a perfect world, we play the Wild and we beat them with 2 of their beloved dudes on our way to win the Cups. That's the best case scenario.
In a perfect world, Calgary somehow makes it. We play them, sweep them, and off to the second round we go. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's tough because this is not this isn't your dog and pony show anymore. These are real rock hard, rock solid players that are teams that anything can happen, right? And you look at last year, we lost a
With
7-game
really
series.
questionable components. Like they all have random little things that are
Exactly. Because you look at last year, like I was saying, is we played the Kraken and lost in a 7-game series when we thought it was going to be over in 5.
Could you imagine our team this year playing the Kraken of last year?
It'd be a much different outcome.
Absolutely wreck them.
Yep. So great questions, Allie and Bill. I think it makes for great discussion. And obviously, the objective is to get and lock yourself into a playoff spot, get as many points. So obviously they're not just going to, try to play that manipulation game. I think they'll try to go after as many points as possible.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they're going to go out there. I can't imagine them throwing a game so that they don't win the conference. Like, it's kind of like the President's Cup conversation. People don't want to win the President's Cup. But it might, it'll make it less painful if they do lose the Conference Cup, and it might make it a little bit easier to say, you know what, why don't we sit Makar and I or play them a little less minutes if we're not that concerned about winning the conference, which I've always been of the mind that you shouldn't rely on the matchups and try to aim for what you're going to match up. But I do think that there's a lot of value in sitting some of those guys like Makar and McKinnon or giving them more sheltered minutes when you can consider that it doesn't matter as much who you're going to
exactly. I think once you're a lock for those top 3, I think is a good indication to really, I don't want to say rest up per se, but you know that you need to mentally and physically prepare for the playoffs, right? Mm-hmm. So it'll be interesting to see. Obviously, it's a tight race. All 3 teams have 90.
Well, on the East Coast, the East is. You've got the top 4 locked in, and then after that, just, who knows? The East is so weird right now. It's just wild how much, and they all suck. That's the thing, is it's not that they're all so good, it's that they're all just having a giant suck off. It's so weird.
Oh man. So moving on from the playoff talk real quick. Before those playoffs begin, though, there might be a chance one kid that just finished his season in Russia comes into the fray. And, of course, we're talking about the prospect that we signed and drafted not too long ago, Nikolai Kovalenko. He landed, and he is in Denver. I believe they assigned him to the AHL. Yes. But do you think he will see any ice time this season with the Avs?
No. So from everything that I've heard, he is okay. Did you know that his dad was involved in oh my gosh, what trade was it? Some big trade. Peter Forsberg.
The Philadelphia,
yes, he was a piece in that trade. And I didn't know that his dad was part of the Nordiques and blah blah blah.
Well, really?
And I was going to do some research into that, but Eric Lacroix was talking about it. He is a littler guy, but he is a grinding, work hard, kind of gives off those Logan O'Connor vibes, just pushes. But he does have a goal scoring touch. We'll see how that translates to NHL. But my point is that I think that he's somebody that is going to vibe with Bednar really fast. So I think if he can get in for 4 games or something like that, he might be able to earn the good graces, because you know how it is with Bednar and his guys. If he doesn't trust you, then he doesn't give a whole lot of chances to earn it back, especially when you're going into the playoffs, and especially when even the first round might not, there's no gimmies in this one. So I'm hoping if he can get in for 3 to 4, we might get to see enough of him. The problem he's been playing in the KHL, and it's just a totally different game. He's young. He doesn't speak great English, it sounds like. So there are a lot of barriers. But I think if he can get a couple good games in and the vibes are right with Bednar, it kind of just feels like it really depends on how Bednar perceives him, because he makes pretty distinct decisions on guys pretty fast as to whether you're in or out. And we saw, look at Ben Myers. You could tell that he was out pretty quick this year.
Yeah. And that's just it. Is since it's so close to playoff time, it kind of gives me kind of remembering glimpses of Cale Makar when he in his first game, a playoff game, right?
And
So,
Kovalenko will be an NHL player. It's just
oh
right
yeah,
now. If
exactly. And that's the thing is, if I personally would like to see a showcase of 4 or 5 games, right? Because I'm interested to see how he gels. I don't think one game is going to be enough to see. Could
right,
be,
especially when
right?
the rest of the team is buzzing so well. Get
Exactly, right?
Cogliano out, move some people up and down. We're still working with our lines anyways. It would be nice to rest a Cogliano, even Parise, get some of these guys some minutes off and let him in, because I feel like we can compensate if there are struggles for him.
Exactly. So I think that's the move. And not, like I said, it might happen, it might not. Obviously, he's going to play a couple games in the AHL, I would assume.
Was it a
To
high ankle sprain? Was it an ankle injury?
I don't think I ever saw what the injury was, other than he sustained something, but the coach back in Russia wasn't too concerned with it.
I thought
So
that was just Russia kidnapping him from us. Like,
it could be.
he's hurt, so he's never gonna make it to American soil. But it was like,
It could
I
be.
think everybody like sighed a breath of relief when he did make his
When he
way over
touched
here,
down in
because I
Denver.
don't think
Yeah.
Russia wanted to let him go.
But again, I think I am excited to see what he brings to the table.
Me too.
Like I said, I just hope you can squeak it in before the playoffs, because I think it's a dangerous move to do it in the playoffs. You know what I mean? So if it's not in the last few games of the season, it's going to be next season. He'll obviously have a great showcase in the preseason for next year.
He probably would still be on call for like depth injury, but that would probably be a pretty desperate scenario to bring him in, considering the depth that we have now. But Logan O'Connor did have his surgery today. They said it went well. So hopefully he should be recovered and ready for like the second round?
He'll be ready next week. I have full confidence and faith in that.
I hate the thought of winning the Stanley Cup without him, but I hate the thought of losing it without him even more.
Well, so. I mean, look at how they won the cup without Gerard, who
I know, man, that's so sad. But he's still up there doing cartwiles. He put in the work to get him there.
Right. So obviously, you know, it takes a whole team throughout the season to win the cup. So anyways, so it'll be interesting to see Kovalenko and how he fits in, where, when. We'll have to just see, and only time will tell. But going on to a quick little bit before we talk about our weekly look ahead, the NHL announced some potential rules they were going to maybe implement. They were playing around with, had some brainstorming ideas with the GM meeting in Florida last week, and they had a couple of them about reviewing penalties that were called. The NHL said that they are looking into having a coach's challenge for a delay of game, so puck over the glass, and a high stick.
Why do we need a coach's challenge? Have some dude watching the camera in the rink that just says, nope, that wasn't actually a high stick. Like, if it's egregious, just have somebody that is in their ear. There's 55,000 microphones, blah, blah, blah. Have a little light that blinks that. I just, reviews are, they better take 12 seconds. The refs do not need to watch it for egregious, like, it doinked off someone's stick. You know what I mean? It's just a bunch of worthless shit is mostly what the GMs talked about. Yeah. Like, everything but what we wanted to hear.
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know what the rule revision is they would allow, but they're looking into it, the allowance of a coach's challenge for a delayed or for a delay of game call, so puck over the glass in the defensive zone, or a high stick that would not have been.
The coach says, no, it actually hit something before it went out, like something else.
They would say, no, that didn't, that hit something before it went out. That shouldn't be a delay game.
Easy to miss, because generally it's a defenseman far away from the play is a lot of times what those happen. So it can be easy to miss, but like I said, just some dude sitting there watching the game like this, and he's just gonna say, oh, yep, that's bad.
Yep. And so they said that the penalty for a failed challenge is the team goes 5-on-3 if the failed challenge
aggressive
happens.
I like that.
Which is a very, because that's the thing is delay a
But I
game
would rather
penalties.
they just did it and got it right versus the coaches having to have their face in an iPad. And like our video coaches are really good, but also you can only see so much on an iPad. And it's not like they have like plenty of time, because what they need to be doing is cutting down the time that you can call a review. But yeah, the simpler response is one dude watching who's solely responsible for the egregious mistake.
I think it might be right. You take it up with Toronto, and then because you just have one, just like with what you said, you have one guy trained on seeing the replay, getting a quick response,
and then
radioing
the time
down.
On that, you have to make 3-on-3 overtimes 10 minutes instead of 5 and not do a shootout at all. Yeah.
You're gonna hate me on this one, Britt. I like the overtime format. I just want the points to be different. I like the overtime format.
I love 3-on-3. I'm saying make it longer. I just don't want to go into shootouts. Or go into a shootout after 10 minutes or 7 minutes. It's just not quite. I think if you added 2 more minutes, you would end most games. I don't like a game coming down to 5 shots. It's just not. It's too much on the goalies.
And well, see, for me, I think it's not necessarily, and I know I'm way outside the box thinking on this, but to me, it's not a question of the time. I think it's the point distribution, because again, right now it's you get 1 point, you lose or win the shootout, you get the second point, right? And it's like that's it.
29 games this year and are almost in a playoff spot because they have something like 15 loser points. The loser point is so idiotic, and it would make the end of games so much more interesting if teams were frantically trying to win. You know what I mean? Because you don't get a point. There is so much value in taking a tie game into overtime to just secure a point. Like the end of a tie games are essentially ruined because there's value in saying, you know what, let's just cruise and get into overtime, because then we can still win, especially if it's a team that excels in 3-on-3, which we're up and down on, but we would see a lot better end of games and overtime. The 3-on-3 would change also if there was no loser point, because you have to win. Like there's no money in losing.
Exactly. Right. So a couple of things that they are toying around with. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. I was listening just this morning to the Locked On Avalanche guys, and they said treat the delay of game challenge and the high stick challenge like an icing. Right.
Yeah. I don't believe that if you took away the delay of game on puck out of play, that these grown, well-trained elite snipers are going to go start rocketing shots into their fans' faces just to get a break.
Like, it's not going to happen.
And 99% of the time, the second it goes out of the rink, you can see oh God, like it was just an accident. Like
exactly. Right. And here's the thing. The delay of game penalty has not always been in the league. And nobody was doing that before. Nobody would do it after.
No, people weren't, and they do take in consideration that they're possibly going to hit a child in the face when they chuck it out.
They're not just going to
never, unless it is like an egregious, like Michigan style doink it over the glass. Like it's just not necessary.
Exactly.
The thought of games changing, which they have over penalties on a delay of game. I will never forget the look on Bo Byram's face when he got that delay of game at the end of that game. And he had 2 penalties that game. Oh my God. Because you can ruin big, huge games.
Yeah.
Just like another penalty that we're adding that will probably have a big effect. The leg over the board penalty now.
Yeah, because I think what had happened is that there was some guy who had his leg dangling over the side and maybe nicked the ref. And so they're just going to, and again, it shouldn't have to go down to a penalty on for like a bench mine or anything. It's like all you need to do is just tell your guys, hey, keep your skates over until your shift begins.
Be aware of your blade. Think about, or like if you have your knee, like it's almost like people forget that we literally have knives on our feet. Like they're actually knives. That's the reason that they move.
Exactly.
And the funny thing is, like, I think it was Alexander Ovechkin that cut the ref's leg. When you think about how many times Ovechkin has probably stood there with his big ass leg over the bench, just drooling, waiting to get on the ice to go get in his office. And like out of all the minutes that he spent on the ice and one time a ref has been cut, like
It's like, come on.
Statistically, people are gonna get cut, and it's probably a good thing. It honestly amazes me that people don't more. So I don't know. To me, it's just a distraction topic.
Well, I tell you what, though,
some rules.
I tell you what, now that I'm thinking about it, that probably is probably the best thing to happen to the Avalanche if that does come into effect, because it keeps them from having too many men on the ice.
Slow your ass down.
No kidding. It would make our line changes a lot more clean.
That's what I think. The Leafs are the only ones that struggle more than the Avs. It's so nice when I hear them whining about it. Because finally, it's not just us.
No kidding. All right. Okay. So last item of business we'll move on to is the weekly look ahead. We got 3 games in hand here that we'll talk about. So tomorrow, Friday, 7 p.m. puck drop. These are all homestand games, which is great. We have the Blue Jackets, the Penguins, and the Canadians. What a mix. Yeah.
Well, in trap. National game on Sunday. Enjoy these 3 games, because after this, we go on to pretty much do a tour of playoff contending,
teams.
like Stanley Cup contending teams. It's this weekend. I'm kind of worried with the amount of rest that we've gotten. Hopefully we don't set a bad tone for going into every game after this up until the playoffs is a meaningful game and a hard team. And also I was curious what you thought. How do we play Annunen in this? Because we can't let Georgie rest too much, but it's nice to get Annunen in relatively meaningful games. It'd be nice to put Georgie in tomorrow and then get Annunen in. But it would almost be nice to put him in 2 games. But then, we don't want to let him sit too long, because Georgie's been sitting for almost a week. Is that a week?
Yeah. So if it were me, I would have Georgiev go against Blue Jackets and Penguins, and then have Annunen play against the Canadians, because that means he gets the break right before you play the Rangers.
And they're not an easy out. The Canadians are just this weird team that's like, if they had like 10% extra of every game, it's almost like they could just, I don't know. They're so weird. They win the most bizarre games. They beat the best teams, and then they still just suck.
Yeah.
I haven't even kept track of Newhook at all this year. Have you heard his name once?
Nope. Not too much, but he has made a name for himself. I do know that much. But with the Columbus game, Brit, there's 13 games left in the season. 2 of those are against Columbus.
How are we seeing Columbus and Edmonton, like all within?
We have not seen Columbus. It's like, if anything, those guys should have been gone and done by the end of November. Especially
because it's such a boring matchup. At least Edmonton is fun.
Yeah. But either way, it's our first meeting with them. First of 2, obviously. I saw Columbus play in person back in San Jose. They're just one of those odd teams that when they have it that game, they have it that game, but they just often don't have it that game. So there's not a lot I can say other than this is a game to handle business. This is not one where you need to clown around. Yeah, exactly. No clowning around. Just basically have the game done and over with by the end of the first period, and kind of just, I don't want to say coast.
Yeah.
But you just make sure it's out of the way.
Trap is a trap, but I don't think that Columbus is even like trap game status anymore. I have hardly even heard their team discussed twice. They're not like the Habs or like Detroit. They're not winning random good games. They're just so bad. And they're just a train wreck altogether. I mean, it's unfortunate that they have talent, but their year, it was supposed to be like kind of a push off year to start really getting going. And they've got Fantilli, my guy. They've got Mr. Johnny Boy down there. And the whole Babcock thing, talk about a way to set the tone for a year. Like, what do you?
That kind of set up the team for failure, in my opinion.
Let's call it good.
So, yeah. But so Columbus, again, not as much notes because, like I said, they're just
work out the kinks.
That team where it's like
all of your crap
they have the one phenomenal game every 10 games, and then the rest it's just like, don't lose it for yourself, Okay, but the big game, this one will be fun. This is going to be the McKinnon and Crosby showcase. Nationally broadcasted, obviously. Noon puck drop. Obviously, Avalanche
What
and
the heck
Penguins.
is
This will
that?
be. What's that?
Why? I hate that so much. Every time my kid has a tournament, we have a matinee game.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy? And that's actually going to be my key to the game is the matinee performance. The Avalanche, that seems to be another kryptonite of theirs is matinee performances. It's like,
Not like
is
waking
there
up.
something wrong with you having to get to the rink a couple hours earlier? Like, what's wrong, you know?
With it not being like a grueling schedule lately, they should all be well rested, but there's something, and I wonder seriously if it's because they're all such absolute maniacs about their routines and like they physically can't squeeze their whole routine in properly before matinee games. I don't know.
Yeah, it's strange, but needless to say, obviously, when McKinnon and Crosby get together, it makes for a really great game. This one, if anything, is probably the most losable game, I would say, just
I don't
because of
know.
the hard hitting.
Are absolutely defeated with Gensel gone. They look like it makes me so sad. Like they have I just watched their game the other night. Like the joy has been sucked from that room, which Gensel getting traded may very well be the reason that Sidney Crosby decides to join us next year because he looked like he was going to cry when he discussed it. So I don't know. They're a sad team, but there's a lot of talent on that team. Veteran, very proven talent that could come out and really take you by surprise and make you look on national TV.
And that's just it. Is they say let's make a spectacle out of this. That's kind of my MO that or my guess is that's going to be their MO is let's have a show, right? And they're going to give it a great effort. I think it's going to be a really fun game.
He's a great goalie.
Exactly. And that's the thing is low key, even though Crosby and McKinnon are really good friends off the ice,
if there's anything left
that little
Crosby
niche
to get up for, it's to go beat his cocky little buddy, you know?
Exactly. That's it. There's a little niche that they're like, I'm gonna lose to you. You know, anybody but you. So that'll be a fun matchup. I'm excited to see that one. But that's my key to the game is make sure you're awake for the game because it's at noon. And then the next one, last one we'll talk about, Avalanche host the Canadiens. The Habs come in with a 25-31-12 record. That'll be a Tuesday, 7 p.m. puck drop game. My question is just going to be, who are the Canadiens?
Who knows?
Year?
They don't know. They're people that just randomly show up.
Out of all the teams, Columbus and Montreal are the two that I've thought about the least. And again, it's nothing against their team, their organization, the players.
They're truly one of the most legendary, history-rich, original 6 teams within the NHL, but they
went to a Stanley Cup final 3 years ago.
That was
in mind. Keep that in mind.
Ask Toronto. Yeah, no, it's honestly shameful. Like, you know, Jeff Merrick, the NHL is always better when blah, blah, blah. The NHL is better when Montreal is playing like an actual NHL team because they have been so underwhelming, even in that cup run, like everything up until that, they barely squeaked. Didn't they only get in from the bubble? Like, didn't they have to make the bubble play-in game?
It was that weird season where you play everyone within your half of the continent. Right, that was kind of the whole thing, and then everyone went to Edmonton and Toronto. I think
Canada just played Canada, right? The whole thing.
Canadian teams played Canadian teams. Yep. And so at the end of it all, Montreal, they won. What was it? They were down 3-0 against Toronto. They come back and win 4-3 in the series. Then they beat.
Toronto should have. That was their year, man.
I can't remember. Then they beat Vegas, and then obviously the Tampa series is what it is. But I guess if I'm to come up with a key to the game, it's to just remember the ghosts of downtown, so to speak. Those who you used to have, Alex Newhook, he might have a heater, right? Because that just tends to be things about former Avalanche players when they play their former team. They tend to go on some heaters. So maybe watch for Alex Newhook.
For the Montreal Canadiens right now.
Motembo and
and he He should be
Very
good,
good one.
occasionally good.
Yeah.
But like I think I read, did they send what's his name? The Wi-Fi. Yak guy?
Oh,
Did they
Arbor Shakai?
I think
I don't know. I again, I haven't heard much come out of the Montreal
I think
camp.
they sent him down. I mean, they just
again,
I mean,
yeah,
literally, their coach's name is Alex Burrows. Have you even heard that name? Like, they're literally not even like dramatic enough to be interesting. And that's, I
yeah,
feel like I know the awful but interesting teams, and then there's the awful and amazing teams, and then you've got just like St. Louis and the Canadians are just there.
yeah. It's just kind of one of those. So here you go. Now, keep in mind, again, the first meeting, the Avalanche lost to the Canadians, right, 4-3.
That's gross. That is
So
not.
this one again, I'm probably
They
going to put
do
it in
that.
the same. I'm probably going to put this one in the same band as get it done in the first period. Just go ham, score 8 goals in the first period, whatever, and then the last 2 periods, it's just play the timeout, right? Just do the fundamentals,
They're
and then win.
gonna be, and they're in a weird place. I forgot. Marty St. Louis, their coach, he just took a leave of absence. He needed surgery on something, or something was going on, but an indefinite leave of absence like a week ago. So the team's probably kind of in a weird place too, because assistant coaches stepping into coaches usually kind of a weird gig, because assistants aren't usually as commanding, like they're kind of more the player coach. So they're probably in a weird place. I don't, especially with him like making the decisions and the calls, and I don't know. It'll be interesting.
Yeah, it'll be interesting for sure. But either way, 3, I would say, winnable games, definitely. I don't want to say easy,
for sure,
right? But they are
not to do well and not set off on a bad tone.
Play according to the statistics, because on paper you are the better team on paper. Play like it. Yeah. That's basically what it boils down to. So with that being said, that takes care of everything on our agenda that we were going to cover for today. Britt, I don't know if you had anything else you wanted to add. Okay, perfect. Well, thank you once again, everyone, for joining us on this episode of the Cluster Puck Podcast, part of the MHRT Network. Again, if you like what you saw, don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow the MHRT Network so you can get notified when shows like the Cluster Puck Podcast go live. You can follow them on the various social media platforms, like I mentioned at the beginning of the video. And then as a reminder, if you want to follow us specifically, you can follow us at Cluster Puck Avs on Twitter, Instagram, and Threads, or at the Cluster Puck Podcast on Facebook. With that being said, here's to another 3 games this week, hopefully another 6 points. McKinnon keeping that home streak alive.
Oh, man, I know.
Let's make sure that happens.
Can he do it this year? Or is it going to, does it have to go into next season, or can he do it this year? Did we figure it out?
It was 40 games that he had to eclipse, so he can do it this year, if I'm not mistaken. God. But he's already hit 30, so it's happy for me. But it's one of those where it's like
he's got to keep scoring in the first minute of the game, like he's done. He's done it in almost every game. I'm like,
get him the puck first. God. Yep. So here's hoping he continues his point streak at home,
and like a 19-game scoring streak or point streak.
19-game scoring streak. So just feed Nate Dogg everything from this point on. Seriously. So with that being said, we hope you guys have a great rest of your week. And as always, go Avs, go.
Fast lane when I pass in the street, bag of money in the passenger seat. Tempo's been asking for me on the road from the west to the east. Way up, I might never come down, cause the coast's racking up the flame out. So high, I might never come down, so what, this is my lifestyle.